my little angels. It's my pleasure to see you. Oh, you see, I have a new friend here. Isn't it sweet? By the way, do you have any pets? How do you treat them? You know, sometimes your pets can help you a lot. Well, here is a special story for you. Puss in Boots. Once upon a time, there lived 3 brothers. They had a mill, a donkey, and a cat. One day, they decided to split their property and go in different directions, searching for some fortune. The oldest brother took the mill. The middle brother took the donkey. And the cat was left to the youngest brother. He sat on the doorstep and started to cry. Oh, poor me! I have nothing but the cat. How could I find any fortune if I have nothing to eat? Suddenly, the cat jumped and said, "Don't worry, master. I will get your living for you. Just listen to me and find out how much I can do for your benefit. First of all, I need a hat, a pair of boots, and a large bag." The boy agreed and gave his last coins to buy a nice hat, a pair of brown boots, and a large bag. The cat put on the new pair of boots and at once left house. This was the Puss in Boots. He picked up some carrots from the backyard and put them in the bag. Then he hid behind the fence, put the bag on the ground, opened it wide, and he began to wait. As soon as the rabbits smelled the carrot, they jumped in the bag. The cat quickly jumped on the bag and quickly closed it. The cat grabbed the bag with the fat rabbits in it, put it on his shoulder, and arrived at the king's palace. He took off his hat and said to the king, "Your Majesty, I have something special for you from my master, the Prince Carabas." The king accepted the gift and ordered his best cook to dress the rabbit for dinner. After that, the cat began to visit the king and bring new presents from the Prince Carabas. One day, the cat took the boy on a river. The cat asked the boy to get undressed and enter into the water. "Wait for me," said the cat, and left the boy. He put on the boy's clothes and went to the king again. "Please help my master, who has been attacked by some robbers," the cat said to the king. "If he even dresses his cat, then he is definitely rich," thought the king. And so he decided to save the fake prince. The king took the boy to the palace, where he gave him the best outfits, very luxurious suit and fantastic shoes. Now he looks like a real prince. The king decided to make a party to celebrate the prince's salvation. The prince started to dance and saw a real princess, the king's daughter. She was so beautiful that our fake prince fell in love from the first sight. The king was glad to marry his daughter to a real prince and approved their marriage. But soon after, some problems started to happen. The king asked for the boy prince and asked, "May we take a walk to your castle? I would like to see how many lands and servants do you have?" The cat heard this talk and answered before the boy, "My master invites you to pay a visit to his castle next week." The king was happy and accepted the invitation. The cat visited a neighboring kingdom and discovered a fantastic castle. While they were traveling, they met many servants in the fields. Whoever they asked, "Whose is that field?" Everyone responded that this field belongs to the Prince Carabas. Meanwhile, the cat ran forward to discover who lives in the castle on the hill. It turned out that there lived a bad and terrible giant. Without thinking twice, the cat caught some mice and climbed up to the window of the castle. He released the mice on the floor and started to wait. As soon as the giant saw the mice, he started to scream like a baby. He was so scared that he could not move. The cat threw a curtain on the giant and stuffed him in it. And so the king, the boy prince, and the princess arrived at the castle. King was convinced that the boy is a real prince with a real castle and servants, so he was absolutely calm about the future of his daughter. The boy was so thankful to the cat that he appointed him as the first cat at the royal court and gave him as many mice for dinner as he could eat. He gave him the best clothes and a whole collection of shoes. And since then, the Prince Carabas, the princess, and the magic cat lived happily ever after. You see? The cat saved the poor boy. Well, this was a fairy tale, of course, but the truth is that your beloved pets deserve good treatment. What if they are magic too? Good night, my dear fellows. Sweet dreams to all of you. The Wolf and 7 Little Goats. Here is a small wooden house on the field. A mother goat and her 7 little goats live here. Mother goat is going to the market to get some food and warns her children before leaving the house. Now, my dear children, I should go to the market to get some milk and cabbage for you. Please stay still and do not open the door to anyone, no matter who knocks. Mother goat hisses them and goes away. At the same time, one grey, angry wolf sits in the bushes and watches Mother goat walking away from the house. He comes to the door and knocks. Hey, kids, open the door. It's me, your mother. I have some milk for you. The first kid replies, No, you are not our mother. Your voice is rough and husky. I know who you are. You are Grey Angry Wolf. Go away. The wolf goes away and drinks some hot milk with a lot of butter. Now his voice is soft and he goes back to the house. He comes to the door and says, Open the door, my dear children. It's me, your mother. I have some cabbage for you. The 7 kids reply, No, you are not our mother. I see your big paws under the door. I know you. You are Grey Angry Wolf. Go away. The wolf goes away and puts on shoes. Now his paws look elegant. He goes back to the house. He comes to the door and says, Open the door, my sweeties. It's me, your mother. I have some sweets for you. The third kid replies, Now you look like our mother. I can open the door. The third kid opens the door and the wolf rushes in. He is ready to attack the kids. What a great mess! The wolf chases the kids and the kids run in different directions. The first kid gets into a chimney. The second kid gets into a closet. The third kid gets under the bed. The fourth kid runs out the door. The fifth kid gets under the table. The sixth kid gets into a basket. And only the seventh youngest kid stays still in the middle of the room and trembles. At this very moment, the mother goat comes back from the market. She goes slowly as her basket is heavy. She carries cabbage and milk, sweets and cucumbers, oranges and nuts. Suddenly, she sees that the door of the house is open. She understands that something is wrong and rushes in. The mother goat sees the wolf inside and decides to kick the wolf away from the house. She takes the broom and yells, "Oh, you gray angry wolf! You break into my house, scare my children, and God knows what you plan to do after that." She starts to wave the broom so hard that she sweeps the wolf out of the house and over the doorstep. The wolf is defeated. He runs away to the forest. Mother Goat looks around and finds no children in the house except the youngest one. Then she starts to call for her children. "Oh, my little silly children, come here. My little goats, come here." And slowly they appear in front of her. The first kid gets out from the chimney. The second kid gets out from the closet. The third kid gets out from under the bed. The fourth kid opens the door and comes into the house. The fifth kid gets out from under the table. The sixth kid gets out from the basket. The mother goat gathers all her children in front of her and says, "Oh, my silly children, I told you not to open the door to anyone. I told you to stay still. And what do I see now?" She starts to scold her children, but the kids gather around and begin to sing a song. "Mommy, mommy, don't you cry. We will sing you a lullaby. The big grey wolf has gone away, and we have a holiday. We are singing all day long. Mother Goat is very strong. She defends us from the wolf, and we shall be playing golf." The mother starts to laugh as the song is so cute and funny. Then all the family start to clean the house all together. Mother takes a broom. The first kid cleans the stove. The second kid wipes the dust from the closet. The third kid makes the bed. The fourth kid fixes the door. The fifth kid takes out food and puts it on the table. The sixth kid puts the fruit into the basket. And only the seventh kid sits on the bed, as he is the youngest one. Well, now you understand how important it is to listen to your parents. Behave yourselves well and take care. Good night, sweeties. The Three Bears. Once upon a time, there were 3 bears who lived in a house in the middle of the forest. One of them was called the Little Bear. Another one was called the Middle Bear. And the third one was called the Big Bear. Each bear had his own bowl for their porridge. A little bowl for the little bear, a middle bowl for the middle bear, and a big bowl for the big bear. Each bear also had a chair to sit in. A little chair for the little bear, a middle chair for the middle bear, and a big chair for the big bear. Finally, each bear had a bed to sleep in. A little bed for the little bear, a middle bed for the middle bear, and a big bed for the big bear. One day, they made some porridge for breakfast and went out of the house to let it cool a bit. While they were away, a little girl who lived in the nearest village passed by the house and looked through the window. Seeing nobody in the house, She lifted the window sash and got through. If she was well-mannered, she would definitely have waited for the bears to come home and wouldn't have eaten alone. But her manners left much to be desired. And so she sat down at the table and started to eat. First, she tasted the porridge of the big bear, and that was too hot for her. Next, she tasted the porridge of the middle bear, but that was too cold for her. Finally, she tasted the porridge of the little bear, and that was neither too hot nor too cold, but just right. Then the girl felt tired and sat on a big chair. It was the chair of the big bear, but that was too hard for her. Then she sat on a middle chair. It was the chair of the middle bear, and that was too soft for her. But when she sat on a little chair, which belonged to the little bear, that was neither too hard nor too soft, but just right. She really enjoyed it. Now she was ready to have a good rest. She went upstairs into the bedroom and looked around. At first, she lay down on a big bed, but that was too high. Then she lay down on a middle bed, and that was too hard for her. Finally, she lay down on a little bed, and that was neither too high nor too hard, but just right. By this time, the three bears thought their porridge was cool enough and came back home for breakfast. They looked around and realized that some stranger was inside. "Somebody tasted my porridge," said the big bear roughly. Then the middle bear looked at his porridge and saw a spoon in his bowl. "Somebody tasted my porridge too," said the middle bear angrily. Then the little bear looked at his bowl and found no porridge in it. "Somebody ate all my porridge," cried the little bear. The bears were very upset that their porridge was gone. They sadly trailed to the room and came up to their favorite chairs. "Somebody was sitting in my chair," growled the big bear. "Somebody was sitting in my chair too," howled the middle bear. "Somebody was sitting in my chair and made a hole in the cushion," cried the little bear. Then the bears became really angry and started to search for the stranger. They checked all the house except for the bedroom. They went upstairs and opened the door. "Somebody was lying in my bed," muttered the big bear. "Somebody was lying in my bed," mumbled the middle bear. And when the little bear came to look at his bed, there was a little girl lying in the middle. The girl was such a cutie that his heart melted at once. Her hair was curly and her eyes were blue. She wore a very beautiful dress and lacquered leather shoes. "Somebody was lying in my bed, and here she is still," said the little bear and smiled. He took the girl in his arms and showed her to the others. The big bear was angry at first, but then he relented, as he had never seen such a sweet little girl. The little girl smiled and raised her arms to hug the bears. The bears immediately fell in love with the naughty girl and allowed her to visit the bears as often as she wanted. They taught her some good manners, The girl quickly learned everything and became the best friend of the bears. Oh, what a cutie! Do you believe that the bears taught her really good manners? Well, I hope you liked the story, my angels. Sweet dreams to all of you. Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. Once there lived a man called Ali Baba. He was very poor. One day, he was cutting firewood near the mountains. Suddenly, he heard a strange knocking sound. He climbed up a tree to see what was happening all around. He saw 40 men riding on horses. All of them were dressed the same, only their trousers were of different colors. All the men had huge daggers behind their belts. Without thinking twice, Ali Baba decided that they must be thieves. They all stopped near the foot of the mountain. One of them, who must have been their chief, got down from his horse and walked towards a huge rock. He stretched out his hands toward the rock and said, "Open sesame." The rock slowly moved and a door opened. There was a large cave inside. All the thieves got down from their horses and went in. The cave was full of treasures, tons of gold and gems. They filled their bags with treasures and left the cave, and the door closed behind them. Ali Baba got down from the tree and walked slowly to the rock. He also stretched out his hands and said loudly, "Open sesame." The door slowly opened. Ali Baba went inside the cave. In the center of the cave, there was a huge platform with boxes full of pearls and jewels, gold and silver coins, diamonds, fabulous pieces of cloth, and ancient books. Ali Baba was wondering how such treasures could appear in the cave. He was stunned for a while, but in a very short time, he filled his bag with treasures and returned back home. He showed the bag full of treasures to his family. As they were poor and had never seen such riches, they started to make plans. "Our worst days have finally gone away," Ali Baba said to his wife. "We have become very rich at once," replied his wife. Ali Baba decided to weigh the treasures in the bag. They had no scales at home, so his wife went to Kasim, Ali Baba's brother. Kasim's wife was a very suspicious woman. She wanted to know the reason why they needed the scales. She followed Ali Baba's wife home and spied to learn their secret. The next day, Kasim and his wife went to the mountains and stopped near the rock. Kasim stretched out his arms and said loudly, "Open sesame." The door opened and they entered the cave. Kasim and his wife filled their bag with treasures and started toward home. But on the way, Kasim's wife came up with an idea. She asked her husband, "Kasim, I am sure that your brother Ali Baba took more treasures than we did. Let's go back and get more gold." They returned to the mountain and approached the rock. Kasim stood before the door when he suddenly realized that he forgot the magic words. He repeated different words, but nothing worked. Kasim's wife stood outside the cave and saw 40 men riding on horses. She hid behind the mountain as she was scared. They approached the rock and found Kasim with a bag full of gold. The thieves were very angry as nobody was allowed to enter the cave. They took away all the gold and treasures and threw Kasim aside. Kasim was hurt, but with the help of his wife, they returned home. The next day, Ali Baba met his brother on the street and understood that he found out his secret. Ali Baba asked Kasim, "My dear brother, what happened to you?" "You see, my wife and I went to the cave and took some treasures. On the way home, my wife asked me to go back and take some more gold as she thought you had more. We returned to the cave and met 40 angry thieves. They took all my treasures and beat me. We barely got away." Ali Baba smiled and said, "My silly brother, if you and your wife were not so greedy, you wouldn't get in such a sad situation. But don't you worry. Now I have enough gold for me and you." Since then, Ali Baba and his brother have become great friends. They do not quarrel, and they share all their joys and troubles with each other. Well, my sweeties, now you understand that greed doesn't bring any good? Very good. Good night, my dear children. Sleep well. The Red Riding Hood. Here is a little girl. She is very sweet and kind. Once upon a time, her grandmother gives her a red riding hood for her birthday. The girl is very happy with the present, so she wears it all the time. Since that time, everybody around her calls her the Red Riding Hood. One day, her mother bakes a plum cake and sends Red Riding Hood to her grandmother. She says, "Listen, honey, here is a tasty plum cake. Please take it and carry it to your grandmother. She will be so glad to see you. But take care on the way. Do not talk to strangers." "Don't worry, Mummy. I will be very careful," replies Red Riding Hood and leaves the house. So she walks through the forest and sings. "What a wonderful sweet summer day, and here I am just walking my way. Some birdies are singing along, and I'm singing a song of my own." Suddenly, she notices a dark shadow on the path. It is a big wolf. "Hello, Little Red Riding Hood. Where are you going?" the wolf asks. "I am going to visit my grandmother and bring her a tasty pie," replies the girl. "And where does she live?" "Oh, not far away from here, over the forest, behind the hill, in the first house from the end," replies the girl. "And what is in your basket?" "Here I have a very tasty plum cake in my basket." "Well, I know the shortest way to your grandmother's house," says the wolf. Really? Oh, yes. Walk straight through the forest and don't turn anywhere, replies the wolf. Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Wolf. The girl is very happy to know the shortest way, and so she walks straight through the forest. In fact, the wolf cheats the girl and is already rushing to Grandmother's house. He knocks on her door and Grandmother replies, "Who's there?" The wolf is very cunning, so he pretends to be the Red Riding Hood and says, "This is me, your granddaughter, the Red Riding Hood." Granny opens the door and the cunning wolf rushes into the house. The wolf locks Grandmother in the closet, changes into Grandmother's clothes, and lies down in her bed, waiting for the Red Riding Hood. He dreams of tasty plum cake. Meanwhile, Red Riding Hood approaches Grandmother's house and meets some hunters on the way who hunt in these places. Red Riding Hood knocks on the door and the wolf replies, "Who's there?" "It's me, your granddaughter, the Red Riding Hood." The wolf opens the door and rushes to the basket, hoping to get the cake right away. The Red Riding Hood understands that the wolf cheats on her and begins to cry for help. In this very moment, the hunters rush into the house and save the girl. The girl is very happy. Now she understands the crafty idea of the wolf. He wanted to lure her into the house and eat her cake. Now the Red Riding Hood and her cake are safe. The hunters release Grandma from the closet. Now everybody is happy, except for the cunning wolf. As the story has a happy end, Grandmother decides to invite everybody for a cup of tea and a slice of cake, of course. Well, my dear children, it is a great story, isn't it? Now you understand why it is so important always to listen to what your parents say. Yes? Very good. Take care and good night, my sweeties. The Little Muk. Once upon a time, there lived a strange little man called Little Muk. There was a legend about this man, and everyone in the town knew it. When Muk was a little boy, he traveled through the desert. He had no parents, so nobody cared about him. One day, he reached a village. Muk was very hungry and suddenly heard an old woman calling out for homeless cats and dogs to come and have some food. Without thinking twice, Little Muk entered the house. A whole flock of cats gathered there, and the old woman fed them. She didn't expect to see Little Muk and was ready to chase him away. But having heard his story, she felt sorry for him and let him live in her house. At first, everything was going well. But soon, when the old woman was out, the cats began to make a mess. When the old woman went back to the house, she did not believe that the cats did it, so she blamed Little Muk. One day, when Little Muk was home alone, one shameless cat broke a very expensive old jug. Muk was very frightened and decided to run away from the old woman. But since she did not pay him anything for his work, he took her shoes and her cane, which he found right away. The magic shoes let him run very fast, and the cane lets him find gold beneath any surface. He ran for a long time until he realized that he could not stop. He had magic shoes on him that allowed him to run very fast. When he finally stopped, he found himself in the royal palace. He asked the king to hire him as a royal runner. At first, the king laughed at him. But when he overtook the best runner in competitions, the king hired him. The royal servants didn't like him, as they were very envious. Little Muk was very sad, as he wanted to find some friends. And one day, Little Muk walked around the garden, and with the help of his magic cane, he found hidden treasures, which the previous king had buried long ago. He began to share the treasures with the servants. But the envy of these people only intensified. They found out the place where Little Muk kept the treasures and came up with a cunning plan. They told the king that Muk has a lot of gold and he gives it to everyone. The king was surprised and ordered them to catch Little Muk in the act. Once when he was digging the gold, the servants caught him and brought him to the king. Little Muk told all about his magical things, and the king took them away. He put the shoes on and started to run, but he could not stop. When the king finally fell down exhausted, he became very angry and ordered Little Muk to be sent out of his country. Little Muk was very upset by such injustice and left. He found himself alone in the forest. He was looking for some food when he saw some figs on a tree and ate them. Suddenly, his ears and nose became ugly, big and long. Little Muk was sad and walked on. He wanted to eat again, so he ate some figs from another tree. And suddenly, his nose and ears became normal. He understood the trick and decided to take revenge on the king. He took a basket of figs and sold them to the royal chef. When the king ate the figs, his ears grew enormously. He called for the best doctors, but nobody could solve his case. Little Muk waited a little bit and visited the royal palace. The king understood that Little Muk had taught him a lesson and offered everything he had if he cured him. But Little Muk was so offended that he took back his shoes and disappeared. Since then, everyone respected Little Muk for his wisdom and ability to protect himself. And what do you think, my dear children? Little Muk was right? Well, it was a very interesting story, right? Good night to all of you. The Three Little Pigs. The three little pigs are brothers. The first pig is very cheerful. He likes to sing songs and dance. The second pig is very kind. He loves to collect berries and feed the birds. The third pig is very smart. He likes to read books. He knows a lot. But most of all, they like to play football all together. It's summer now, but soon a cold autumn is coming, and they need to build houses. "Let's build our houses here," says the first little pig. "Yes," says the second little pig. "That's a good idea," says the third little pig. The first little pig gets some straw, and he starts to build a house of straw. He sings, "Hum-dee-dum, dum-dee-dum, hee-dee-dum, dee-dee-hum," when he works. The second little pig gets some wood, and he starts to build a house of wood. He sings, "Hum-dee-dum, dum-dee-dum, hee-dee-dum, dee-dee-hum," when he works. The third pig is very clever. He gets some bricks, and he starts to build a house of bricks. He sings, "Hum-dee-dum, dum-dee-dum, hee-dee-dum, dee-dee-dum," when he works. Now all the houses are ready, but a big bad wolf lives in the forest. Every day the wolf watches the pigs. He is very jealous because it's getting cold and he doesn't have a house. He is hungry and he wants to eat. He goes to the house of straw and knocks on the door. "Can I come in, little pig? I'm not very big," says the wolf. But the first pig looks out the window and sees the wolf. So he replies, "I know who you are. You are Big Bad Wolf. Go away." But the wolf blows and blows, and the house falls down. The first pig is very sad, and he cries for help. "Brothers, come and help me. The big bad wolf is here." Meanwhile, the wolf runs to the house of wood and knocks at the door. "Can I come in, little pig? I'm not very big," says the wolf. But the second pig looks out the window and sees the wolf. So he replies, "I know who you are. You are Big Grey Wolf. Go away." The wolf blows and blows, and the house falls down. The second pig is very sad, and he cries for help. "Brothers, come and help me. The big bad wolf is here." Now the wolf runs to the house of bricks. He knocks on the door. "Can I come in? I am Little Wolf. I am cold and hungry." But the third pig looks out the window and replies, "Oh no, you are Big Wolf. I won't let you in. Go away." The wolf was going to blow again and ruin the house. But at this very moment, the other two pigs ran up to the house and began to tease the wolf. "If you are listening to me, Big Grey Wolf, oh, can't you see? You will never win the pigs. You won't break the house of bricks." The wolf becomes very angry and runs for the pigs. They catch the wolf and put him in a bag. Now they are safe. And although the houses of the first pig and the second pig are broken down, they stay positive. Now they will live all together in the house of bricks. The pigs spend a great winter together, and when the spring comes, they all build the rest of the houses together. Oh, and what has happened to Big Grey Wolf? Don't you worry, kids. The wolf feels guilty and asks the pigs to forgive him. Pigs feel sorry for the wolf and let him stay in the house. During the winter, he helps the pigs with the housework. He carries water, chops wood, and helps to clean the house. Now everybody is happy and they sing all together. Hum-de-dum, dum-de-dum, hee-de-dum, dee-de-dum. I hope you liked the story, my bonnies. Oh, are you sleeping already? Good night to all of you. Bye. The Wooden Boy. Once upon a time, there lived a poor carpenter who made his living by making puppets. He lived all alone in an old house made of brick. He was already old, but had no wife and no children, so he needed someone to take care of. One day, he found a wooden log in the yard and decided to make a new puppet out of it. He made a body for a puppet and carved a face for it as well. He wanted to make a little boy puppet. As it was late, the man put the puppet on the table and went to bed. The following morning, the man was awakened by a strange, thin voice. He looked round the room, but there was nobody there. He looked under the table. Nobody. He looked under the bed. Again, nobody. He came up to the table and saw his puppet had come alive. The master was very surprised. He rushed for his carpentry tools and made legs and hands for his puppet boy. Now the puppet boy was ready. Next day, the carpenter collected his last money in his pockets and went to the market to buy some clothes for his boy. He bought him a pair of trousers, a shirt, and a cap. When the boy learned to walk, the master decided to send him to school because he wanted him to be a well-educated person. But the boy did not want to learn. He just wanted to play outside with his friends. When the first day of school came, the old carpenter scraped together some more money. He gave it to the boy and said, "Son, here are some coins for you. Buy yourself textbooks." The boy took the money and slipped out of the house. On his way to school, he met a strange couple, an old fox and a fluffy cat, the cunning beggars. They encouraged the boy to skip the lessons and offered him a cunning plan. "Do you want to become rich, my dear?" asked the fox. "Sure I do. I need some money for my old father," replied the boy. "Then listen. Let's go to the wonder field. You will bury your money in the ground. Then pronounce the magic words, 'Money, money, come to me. Bring me what I want to see. Wonderfield needs magic spell. Money tree will ring your bell.' And the next morning, you will find a money tree with a lot of golden coins on it," proposed the cat. The boy agreed. He put all his money in the ground and began to wait for the money tree to grow up. In the end, the boy fell asleep. Do I have to say that in the morning he did not find any money tree or even those coins that he had buried? The boy understood that the beggars fooled him, but there was nothing to do. The beggars knew their stuff. The boy was ashamed to return home without money. Then he decided to get a job in a puppet theater to earn some money and go back home. The owner of the theater was a very harsh and angry man. He promised him good conditions, but in fact, he also cheated him and did not pay him any money. One evening, he was sitting in front of the fireplace with some other puppets and heard a mysterious legend. There is, they say, one house with a fireplace. Behind this fireplace, there is a fake wall. So, there is a hidden cave full of gold and diamonds behind the wall. The boy was fascinated by this legend and dreamed of finding these treasures in order to help his father. The next day, he convinced his friends to run away from the theater. They fooled the owner of the theater and escaped with the help of their friends. They ran as fast as they could and reached the carpenter's house by morning. They knocked, and the old carpenter opened the door. He was very happy. He had given up hope of ever seeing his boy again. The boy waited until everyone fell asleep and went to the fireplace. He touched the wall and realized that it was fake. He pushed the wall aside and went behind it. Suddenly, he saw a cave full of treasures. There were tons of gold, silver, and diamonds. He woke his father and told him about his amazing discovery. Since then, their future has become secure and bright. The wooden boy was very happy. No one cheated him anymore, and he, in his turn, was always honest with others. Well, my bonnies, this is the end of the story that tells us what greed leads to. After all, it is very bad to be greedy. Good night, my dear children. See you next time. The Sleeping Beauty. Once upon a time, there lived a good king and his queen. They had no children for many years and were very sad. Then, one day, the family had a lovely baby girl, and the whole kingdom was happy. There was a great party to celebrate the princess's birth. All the fairies in the kingdom were invited. They gathered around the table and said, "May she grow to be the most beautiful girl in the world. She will sing sweetly and dance so well. She will live happily." All the fairies blessed the baby and gave her beautiful gifts. But the king forgot to invite an old fairy. She knew that the party was held without her and cursed the little princess. She boiled a poisonous potion and muttered the spell angrily. "May she grow very beautiful, but very mean. She will sing very well, but her voice will be cold. She will dance very well, but no one will like to dance with her because of her arrogance." The old fairy finished the spell with the following words. "When the baby is 16, she will touch a spindle and fall asleep for 100 years and no one will be able to wake her up." The king and queen were shocked and begged the fairy to forgive them and take her words back. But the fairy refused. When the other fairies saw the king and queen crying, they tried to help them and said, "We wished to undo the spell of the old fairy, but her words are irrevocable. We can help you in a different way. Your daughter will wake up again if a handsome prince kisses her." Hearing this, the king and queen were relieved. The king ordered that all the spindles be removed from the castle in order that the princess wouldn't have an opportunity to touch one. The princess grew up to be a very beautiful girl, but everyone agreed that she was mean. She had a very good voice, but her singing was detached and her voice was cold. She danced very well, but nobody wanted to dance with her because of her arrogance. Time passed. When the princess was 16 years old, she was walking in the woods when she suddenly met an old lady spinning. "What is this? May I try it?" asked the princess. The old lady said, "Of course, my pretty little child." And the princess sat down to spin. But the moment she touched the spindle, she fell to the ground, fast asleep. 100 years passed. The castle and surrounding gardens became abandoned. The wild roses grew everywhere. One day, a prince from a faraway land lost his way. He went deep into the forest and crossed many rivers. Finally, he came to the abandoned palace. The prince entered and looked around. There was no one there. Only the wind broke the silence. He traveled along through numerous rooms, but they were empty as well. Finally, he opened the last door and found the sleeping princess. She was such a beautiful girl that the prince kissed her. The princess yawned and opened her eyes. She saw the prince and smiled. She asked him, "Are you my handsome prince?" "That's me, my lovely princess," answered the prince. Suddenly, the old castle turned into a beautiful brand new palace. It was full of servants. The roses bloomed in the garden. The king and queen appeared in front of the couple and hugged the princess and her prince. The prince and princess fell in love with each other at first sight. They married and lived happily ever after. Well, even the most beautiful princesses can suffer from loneliness if they are arrogant. That was our story, my little children. Good night to you all. See you soon. The Ugly Duckling. It is a lovely day in spring. There is a duck family living in a farmyard. Mother Duck has 6 ducklings. 5 of them are the usual cute ducklings, but the 6th is very different from the rest. He is bigger than the rest of them, and his neck is too long. Instead of soft and yellow, his feathers are rough and gray. Instead of quacking, he honks. Instead of walking, he stumbles along the path. The next day, Mother Duck sets her kids in a line to jump into a pond to teach them swimming. 5 of them swim well, but the 6th duckling paddles up and down in the water. Watching this scene, the other ducks in the farmyard say, "Poor Mother Duck. All of her ducklings are so nice, except this one is absolutely ugly." The little duckling is very sad because he thinks that he is the ugliest among all his brothers and sisters. One day, he sees his own reflection in the water and cries, "Nobody likes me. I am so ugly." But the mother duck says, "No matter how he looks, let him be ugly and behave strangely. I love all my children." Then she says to the ducklings, "Now, my dears, have a good time." But the poor ugly duckling doesn't have a good time. The hens all bite him. The big ducks walk on him. The poor duckling is very sad. He doesn't want to be so ugly, but he can't help it. One day he feels so miserable that he decides to run far away and hide under some bushes. The little birds in the bushes are afraid and fly away. "It is all because I am so ugly," says the duckling. So he runs away. Late at night, he comes to an old house. The house stands alone in the forest. It looks creepy and shabby, but the wind blows so hard that the duckling decides to enter the house. He meets an old woman who lives in this house with her cat and her hen. After thinking a bit, the old woman decides to keep him. She says, "I will keep this strange bird. Maybe he will give some eggs later." The next day, the cat sees the duckling and begins to growl. The hen asks the ugly duckling, "Can you lay eggs?" The duckling says, "No, I can't." "Then keep still," says the hen. Then the cat asks, "Can you growl?" "No," says the duckling. "Then keep still," said the cat. And the duckling hides in a corner. He feels very lonely and wants to find some friends. The next day, he decides to go for a walk. He sees a big pond and starts to swim, but the other animals make fun of him as he differs so much from them. Summer comes to an end and it's getting cold. The leaves are falling from the trees. The pond where he usually swims starts to freeze. Other birds fly south. The poor little duckling has to go back to the house with the unfriendly neighbors. He has a hard time, but spring finally comes. The ugly duckling has grown up by now. His neck becomes longer, his body becomes bigger, and his legs become stronger. One day, when the water has melted in the pond, the ugly duckling goes there and sees very beautiful birds. He has never seen them before. They have the same long neck and big body. Suddenly, the ugly duckling notices his reflection in the water and sees that he also looks like these beautiful birds. The following autumn, the whole flock of swans, including the former ugly duckling, fly south. They make several circles over the farmyard, the pond, and the house. Everybody notices the beautiful flock of swans. They watch carefully and notice the ugly duckling among the swans. "Look," they say, "this is our ugly duckling. See how beautiful he is." Everyone follows the flock flying away and cannot believe that all this time they have treated him so badly. They feel very ashamed. Fortunately, this tale ended very well. What a pity that life often turns out differently, and the most beautiful things may not be seen right away. Please be kind to those around you. Sleep well, my bonnies. See you next time. The Bremen Musicians. Once upon a time, there lived a farmer who had a donkey. This donkey had worked for a long time already, carrying bags of grain to the mill. But as the years passed, the donkey got older and lost its strength. Early one morning, he decided to leave his master and started a long journey. He didn't know where to stop for the night and was looking for shelter. Along the way, he met a skinny old dog who invited him to sleep in his doghouse. The dog had the same problem. He was too old for serving his master. He couldn't protect the farm anymore. Next morning, the two fellows decided to continue the journey together. They passed along the river where they met an old fluffy cat who was trying to catch a fish in the river. The cat was very sad. "Why are you so sad?" asked the donkey. "I am too old for chasing mice or catching fish. My master kicked me away from the house, and now I'm here," answered the cat. "Oh, cheer up. Come on, join us," the donkey said. The cat joined the company, and so they traveled all together. By evening, they passed through the wood and met an old rooster. He looked very sad. He tried to crow, but he couldn't as he was too old. "Why are you so sad?" asked the dog. "I am too old for crowing. I can't wake everybody up in the mornings as I used to. My master kicked me away from the farm, and so I'm here all alone," answered the rooster. "Oh, cheer up. Come on, join us," the dog said. The rooster joined the company, and so they traveled all together. The fellows decided to spend the night in the forest. Before sleeping, the rooster flew up into a tree and saw a house with a light. The friends wanted to have shelter, so they got up and made straight for the light. Finally, they arrived at the house and looked around. Being the tallest of them, the donkey got up on its hind legs and looked through the window. The donkey leaned over the windowsill and saw 4 armed robbers sitting around the table. There was a lot of food and drinks on the table. The friends gathered in a circle and made a plan how to kick the robbers away from the house. They formed a tower by stepping on each other's shoulders. The donkey stood on the ground, the dog stood on the donkey, the cat stood on the dog, and on top of the tower was the rooster. When the donkey gave the signal, They all started to shout. When the robbers heard this strange, loud singing, they jumped out of the windows as they were terrified. Then the friends entered the house and settled there. They enjoyed the food and drinks on the table and fell asleep at once. The friends were happy as they finally found shelter. The next morning, they sat round the table making plans for the future. Since they had no money, they had to figure out what to do for a living. The donkey proposed to travel to the nearest farm and find a job there. But the friends denied his plan, as all of them were old and couldn't do any reasonable job. The dog proposed to go hunting to the nearest wood, but the friends denied his plan, as all of them were slow and clumsy. All the animals will escape from us, they said. The cat proposed to find some house and ask for some food, but her plan was also denied, as no one would want to take care of all those animals for nothing. They had to serve somehow to have some food and shelter. Finally, the rooster said the following: "Let's make a musical band." "What?" asked the friends with surprise. "Yes, a real musical band. It's a fantastic idea. The donkey will play the guitar, the cat will play the piano, the dog will play the drums, and the rooster will sing." The friends were surprised, but they really liked this idea. The next morning, they organized a band and went to the nearest town. It was called Bremen. They reached the town market and found the place in the center. Every day they organized concerts, and eventually the audience loved them and began to take care of the animals. Our friends were really happy. Finally, they had a house of their own and a good job. The animals lived happily ever after and sang many lovely songs. This is how the story ends. Despite all their troubles, their dream came true. Good night, my sweeties. See you next time. The Jug of Gold. Once I heard a very ancient story known for ages. My grandmother told me this story, and she knew this story from her grandmother. A long time ago, there lived a simple plowman. He had only a piece of land and a couple of oxen. He was not rich nor poor, as he earned an honest livelihood. One day, he came to the farmyard and found that the wolves stole his oxen. He was very sad, as this was the only thing he had to make his living. When the spring came and it was time to plow and sow, he could not work without his oxen and decided to lease his land to a neighbor. The neighbor started to plow and suddenly bumped into something hard. He leaned to the ground and saw a huge jug full of gold. He left his plow and ran to the owner of the land.
"Hey, neighbor, I found a jug of gold in your land. The gold should belong to you with no doubts."
The owner of the land was fair, so he said, "I can't accept the gold. You found it, so the gold belongs to you now." The neighbor did not agree with the landowner and proposed the following:
"Let's go to the king. He will judge for us."
When the king heard about the jug of gold, his eyes widened with envy. He couldn't imagine that anyone besides he could own this treasure. He narrowed his eyes slyly and said,
"The gold should not belong either to you nor to your neighbor. The gold was found in the land of my kingdom, so it belongs to me."
The king and his servants hurried to the jug. They opened it and saw a huge pack of snakes. In terror and anger, the king returned to the palace and ordered punishment for the plowman who had dared to deceive him.
"My dear king," said the plowman, "please spare me. I swear that the jug was full of gold."
The king thought again and sent his most faithful servants to check once again. The servants returned back and said to the king, "Your Majesty, the jug is full of gold." The king ran to the plowed land and opened the jug once again, and it was full of snakes.
"It can't be true,"
thought the king. All of his servants couldn't lie to him. Nobody could understand what was happening. The next day, the king ordered all the wise men in his kingdom to be gathered to him.
"Explain to me," he said. "What kind of miracle is this? The plowman found a jug of gold in the ground. I go there, and the jug is full of snakes. My people go, and the jug is full of gold. What does this mean?"
The wise men thought for a while and answered, "Don't be angry, Your Majesty. The jug is full of gold for those who work hard. It is a reward for their honest work. And when you go and want to steal someone else's happiness, instead of gold, you find snakes in the jug." The king shivered and found no words to respond. He understood that he didn't have a chance to take the gold.
"Well, and who should get the gold?" he said at last.
The wise men thought for a while and said the following: "If neither the plowman nor his neighbor wants to take the gold, maybe they have children who may take the gold in their turn." And it turned out that the plowman had a son and his neighbor had a daughter. Then the wise men decided to marry the young couple and give them the jug of gold. The parents agreed and celebrated a magnificent wedding for their children. The jug of gold served as a wedding gift, as a wish to work honestly and pass the jug to their children. The young couple were very happy to receive this present. Well, this story explains the truth. Honest work and a kind heart will always bring you gold. But if you are greedy and you want to take things that do not belong to you, the pack of snakes is what you will have in the end. Bye-bye, my sweeties. See you tomorrow. Father Frost. Once upon a time, in a land far away, there lived a peasant man and his daughter. The man felt lonely and decided to marry. He chose a woman who had a daughter of her own. At first, the woman tried to treat both girls well, but soon everything changed. She always praised her own daughter, whatever she did, and the stepdaughter had a hard time. Whatever she did, no matter how hard she tried to please, the stepmother was unhappy. One day,
the woman decided to get rid of her stepdaughter. She turned to the man and said, "Send her away, no matter where, so that my eyes won't see her and my ears won't hear her voice. Take her to the forest and leave her in the cold." Well, she was a very cruel woman. The man felt guilty about his daughter, but he couldn't resist his wife. So he placed his daughter in a sledge and drove her to the forest, where he kissed the girl and left her alone in the cold. The poor girl sat down and started to cry. She was all alone and nobody could help her. Suddenly, she heard a faint sound coming from the other side of a tree. She looked around and saw an old man with a long beard. He was wearing a long white fur coat and a fur cap and had a cane in his hand. "Are you warm, little girl?" The girl was cold and lonely, but she smiled and said, "I'm very warm, don't you worry." Then Father Frost frowned, raised his cane, and called for a great blizzard. "And how do you feel now?" The girl was freezing, but she smiled again and answered, "Don't you worry, kind old man. I am very fine." Father Frost softened, leaned closer to her, and said kindly, "I see that you are a very good girl. Your patience and good manners will serve you very well." Father Frost covered her in a long fur coat and said tenderly, "I will take you to my house. My wife, Mother Frost, and I will be happy to take care of such a nice girl." The girl was happy to live with her new family, but after some time, she became sad. She missed her father a lot and felt pity for him. Father Frost gave her the most beautiful fur coat, a pair of boots, and a sleigh with the fastest horses. She took some gifts and hit the road. She knocked on the door and froze on the doorstep. Her father couldn't believe his eyes. He was so happy to see her. Her wicked stepmother and her sister were shocked. They were very envious, as she was dressed very well and looked so chic and beautiful. They snatched all the gifts and began to ask her different questions. The girl told them how she met Father Frost and what had happened later. The next day, the wicked stepmother decided to send her own daughter to Father Frost. She took her to the forest and left her on the snowy glade. She told her to sit still and wait for Father Frost. She waited for a very long time, but no one came. But then she heard a faint sound coming from the other side of a tree. She looked around and saw an old man with a long beard. "Are you warm, little girl?" he asked. "Can't you see I am cold and hungry? What a stupid question," replied the girl angrily. "And what are you doing here alone in the forest?" continued Father Frost. "I'm waiting for my presents from Father Frost," she answered. Father Frost murmured. "And why should I give you any presents? You are not kind and timid, as I see. Go away." Father Frost raised his cane and caused a snowy blizzard. It picked up the girl and swirled her in the air. Since then, the wicked stepmother and her daughter never tried to reach Father Frost. Well, my dear children, this was a very educative story, isn't it? Now you see that kindness and modesty always serve you very well? Very good. Good night to all of you. The Tortoise and the Hare. Once upon a time, in a field not far away from here, there was a young and cheerful hare. More than all other activities, he loved to run fast. He ran around the forest, teasing other animals who were slower than he. He made fun of birds, mice, and bears. He teased the animals, saying, "Ha ha, you are so slow." One day he met a tortoise who was very slow. The tortoise sat on a stone, getting ready for his dinner. He liked to eat very slowly. However, he always did everything very slowly. The hare started to mock the tortoise, singing, "You are slow as a stone. You are sitting all alone. I can run the whole world through while you are choosing what to chew." The hare ran round and round until the tortoise felt dizzy. He was very angry, as he didn't like it when someone interrupted his dinner. Then the hare said, "Listen, I am the fastest animal in the whole wide world. I'm faster than a cheeky cheetah, a kicking kangaroo, and a racing rabbit." "Oh, please be quiet," sighed the tortoise. "You are so proud of yourself. Please be modest. Otherwise, you can get into a tricky story." "How tricky could it be? Should I run for it?" asked the hare, ironically. The tortoise rolled his eyes and carried on chewing some tasty lettuce leaves. "Oh, you two, stop arguing," said a blackbird sitting on a tree branch. "No, this is serious," said the hare. "I will prove to you all that I'm the fastest animal in the whole wide world. Let's make a race." "Okay," said the tortoise. "We will see who is the fastest one. Let's turn to the wise old owl to organize a race for us." The wise old owl arranged the race for the next day. All the animals in the field put on their best clothes, groomed their fur, picked up a flag to wave, and got ready to support the hare and comfort the tortoise. "On your marks, ready, steady, go!" called the owl, and the race was on. The tortoise set off very slowly, and the hare raced off very fast, and soon he was out of sight. In fact, he was so far ahead that when he looked back, the tortoise was nowhere to be seen. "Gosh," the hare thought, "I have won already. I think I'll just have a little nap under this tree. It's such a hot day." So the hare sat under the tree and soon fell asleep. Meanwhile, the tortoise walked slowly, enjoying the sun on his shell and nibbling the grass from time to time. On and on he hobbled. He walked past the oak tree, then he crossed the bridge, then he passed by the cowshed, and finally he passed the hare who was still snoring under the tree. He walked on until he came to the finish line, where the wise owl and all the other animals in the field had gathered. All the animals clustered round the tortoise, cheering and shouting, "Well done! Well done! You're the winner!" The hare heard the noise and woke up. "Oh my, what's going on? What's all that noise about?" "Never mind, I'd better finish the race and then I can have my dinner," he thought. The hare raced off down the hill towards the finish line. But when he got there, to his horror, he saw the tortoise with a gold medal round his neck. "This can't be true. He must have cheated," cried the hare. "Everyone knows I'm faster than the tortoise. I'm the fastest in the whole world." "Sorry, buddy, but you've lost this race. Let that be a lesson to you. Slow and steady wins the race." "Cheer up, hare. It was only a race," the tortoise said. "I'm sure you will win the next one. We'd better be friends and cool off together instead of racing in such hot weather." And from that day, they became the best friends, and the hare never boasted again. Well, my bonnies, slow and steady always wins the race, right? Very good. See you next time. The Golden Fish. Once upon a time, in a land far away, lived a very poor couple in a small shabby house by the sea. They lived in great poverty and had nothing to eat except for fish that the old man caught in the sea. One morning, the fisherman took his net and went fishing. He sat on the shore with his net and waited. Suddenly, the net shook and pulled the old man toward the sea. He began to pull harder and pulled the net to the shore. The man leaned closer to the net and saw a golden fish. There was a crown on her head, and her scales glittered in the sun. The golden fish begged the man to save her life and offered to grant him any wish in return. But the kind-hearted fisherman asked for nothing and returned the golden fish to the sea. However, the fisherman's wife was not so kind and started to scold the old man as she realized how many things she could have had from the golden fish. And so she sent him back to the sea to catch the golden fish and ask for a loaf of bread. The fisherman caught the fish again and wished for a loaf of bread. When he returned home, he found a fresh loaf of bread on the table. The next morning, the wife sent her husband back to the sea to ask for a new wash tub. The golden fish agreed and granted the new wash tub to the old man. The following day, the woman wished for a new house. The old man tried to explain to his wife that it was too much, but the woman was determined. The husband went to the sea again and wished for a new house. The next morning, the wife was standing on the porch of a new house, thinking what else she could wish for. She turned to the man and said, "Go back to the sea and tell her that I don't want to be a plain peasant. I want to be a fine lady." He did not answer his wife, but only sadly walked to the sea. The next day, the wife was standing on the porch of the brand new castle. She wore a fine dress and lacquered boots. The yard was full of servants trying to please her. She called for her husband and ordered, "Hey, you! It's not enough for me. Now I want to be the queen of this land. Go back to the sea and ask the fish to fulfill my wish." Anne became sad as he realized that his wife was out of control now. The man sadly walked to the sea again. When he returned back, he could not recognize his wife. So mean and arrogant she was. The whole yard was full of carriages filled with presents from across the land. The wife was standing on the balcony of her castle and gave orders to her servants. She noticed the old man and said angrily, "Hey, you! Listen to me now. Go and find the fish and tell her that I don't want to be the queen of the land anymore. I want to be the queen of the sea." The old man wanted to answer her, but the servants kicked him away from the royal court. He went back to the sea and called for the golden fish. When she appeared, the man told her what had happened to his wife and her last wish. The golden fish silently listened to the old man and said, "Go home. I know how to help your grief." The man went back home and saw his wife in the same poor clothes, sitting on the doorstep of their former shabby hut. Now she realized that she asked for too much and didn't value what she had before. Well, my bonnies, did you like the story? Now you understand how important it is to be thankful for what you have. See you next time. The Goldilocks. Once upon a time, there lived a man and his wife in a tiny house in the woods. Behind the house, there was a wonderful garden with the most beautiful flowers, plants, and vegetables. This garden belonged to a wicked witch who built a high wall to protect her garden from strangers. The husband and his wife were very poor, so their garden was small and the soil was rocky. And one day, they decided to get into the witch's garden to get some food. The man climbed over the garden's wall and brought some fruits to his wife. Another day, they decided to get back to the garden and bring some more food. Then again and again, until it turned into a habit. But one day, when he climbed over the wall, something scared the man. The wicked witch was standing right in front of him. "How dare you come into my secret garden and steal my food?" she said angrily. The man's voice trembled. "I am sorry, but my wife and I were very hungry, and I noticed that your garden had so much food. Please, if you let me go, I promise not to take your food anymore." The Wicked Witch started to speak in a nicer voice. "Well, if your intentions are true, then I will allow you to take all the food your wife and you can eat, but on one condition. When you have a baby girl, you will give her to me. I will raise her in my castle. She won't leave the castle unless a handsome prince kisses her." The man was so terrified of the witch that he agreed. A few years passed, and the man and his wife had a daughter. The parents named her the Goldilocks, as her hair was as gold as the wheat. The man and woman loved their daughter very much, so they kept their baby hidden in the house so that the witch couldn't take her away. The man and woman did not know that the witch could see them from her castle on the hill. She watched them each day playing with their baby girl. Finally, one day, the witch came to their house and knocked on the door. "This little child belongs to me now," the witch said angrily. "I shall now take her to live with me in my castle." Saddened, the man and his wife let the witch take their daughter away, as the man had promised it before. Many years passed since then. The girl grew up and became one of the most beautiful girls in the world. The Goldilocks had lovely hair that was golden like the rays of the sun. Besides that, her hair was really long. The Wicked Witch locked the girl in the highest tower of the castle. This tower had no door and no way to the top, only a small window that allowed her to see the world outside. So she spent all the days alone. Her only pleasure was singing through the tower window, so all the birds could fly up to her and sing with her. When the witch wanted to go inside the tower, she cried out, "Hey, Goldilocks, let down your golden hair and let me climb up." Then the witch would climb up using her hair to go inside the castle tower. But one day, when Goldilocks was alone in the castle tower, a prince passed by on a gorgeous white horse and heard a lovely song coming from the tower. But when he tried to find the door to see the singer, he could not find one. Feeling sad, he went back home. But whatever he did, he could not forget that delightful singing. So he went to the castle every afternoon, hoping to see the singer. One day, as he was resting against a tree outside the castle tower, he saw the witch yell out to the Goldilocks, "Hey, let down your golden hair!" Curious, the prince kept watching and saw the Goldilocks let her long flowing hair down for the witch to climb up. The very next day, the prince went back to the castle tower and decided to call out for the girl the same way. Immediately, the Goldilocks let her hair fall down, and the prince climbed up her golden locks into the castle tower. As soon as the prince saw the Goldilocks, he fell in love from the first sight and decided to marry her, as she was just marvelous. He freed the Goldilocks from the tower, and they escaped together to live happily ever after, despite all the spells of the Wicked Witch. The prince kissed the Goldilocks, and they happily escaped from the castle. Oh, it was a marvelous wedding. The whole county was at the wedding, including the parents of the Goldilocks. They were so happy for their daughter that they danced all night long. Well, this was a very romantic story, a story about true love. I hope you enjoyed this fairy tale, my sweethearts. Good night to all of you. See you next time. Cinderella. Once upon a time, there lived a girl called Cinderella. She lived with her stepmother and 2 stepsisters. Poor Cinderella had to work hard all day long so the others could rest. She had to wake up very early each morning to start the fire, make breakfast, dress up and comb her careless sisters. One day, big news came to town. The king and queen were going to have a ball. Their only son was about to find a bride. All of the young ladies in the land were invited to come. The stepmother called Cinderella and ordered her to sew 2 brand new gowns for her stepsisters. "Faster!" shouted one stepsister. "You call that a dress?" screamed the other. "Oh dear," said the poor girl. "When will I have time to make my own dress for the ball?" "You?" yelled the stepmother. "Who said you were going to the ball?" "This is hilarious," said one stepsister. "Look at you. Your dress is dirty and your face is smeared with cinder. Who would let you enter the palace?" All of them laughed at Cinderella. The poor girl burst into tears. She was very sad and lonely. Soon the time came and her family went to the ball. Their fine carriage came to the door. The stepmother and stepsisters hopped inside and left. Poor Cinderella sat on the doorstep and said, "I wish I could go to the ball too." Then, bang! All of a sudden, in front of her was a fairy. "Who are you?" "I am your fairy godmother, of course. I know your wish, and I have come to grant it." "But," said Cinderella, "my wish is impossible." "Well, let me see. I think you want to go to the ball, but you look a bit messy, my little child," said the fairy godmother. "All right, let me see what I can do here." All of a sudden, she waved her magic wand, and at once Cinderella was all clean. She was dressed in a beautiful blue gown. The fairy godmother tapped her wand again and cast a pair of horses and a beautiful carriage. Cinderella was ready to go when the fairy godmother said, "My magic will end at midnight, so you must be home before then." Good luck! When Cinderella arrived at the ball, everyone was dazzled by her beauty. As soon as the prince set eyes on Cinderella, he fell in love with her. "Would you dance with me?" he asked. "Certainly, Your Majesty," said Cinderella. And from that moment on, the prince knew he had found his true love. Soon the clock struck midnight. "I must go," said Cinderella, suddenly remembering her promise to her fairy godmother. She fled from the ballroom and ran down the palace steps. The prince ran after her, but when he got outside, she was gone. But there on the steps, he found a glass slipper. The prince picked it up and rushed back into the palace. The next day, Cinderella's stepsisters could talk of nothing but the ball and the beautiful girl who danced with the prince. Suddenly, they heard a knock on the door. It was the prince who stood on the threshold of the house. Beside him, there was a servant holding the little glass slipper on a velvet cushion. "The girl whose foot fits this slipper is my one and only true love," said the prince. "I am visiting every house in the kingdom searching for her." The two stepsisters rushed forward to try on the slipper. They both squeezed and pushed as hard as they could, but their clumsy feet were too fat and big for the tiny glass shoe. Finally, Cinderella stepped forward. "Please, Your Majesty," she said shyly. "May I try?" Cinderella put her foot into the slipper, and it fitted as if it were made for her. As the prince gazed into her eyes, he knew that he had found the girl he met at the ball. "Will you marry me?" said the prince. "Yes, I will," cried Cinderella. On the day of their wedding, bells rang throughout the kingdom. Even Cinderella's nasty stepsisters were invited to the wedding. Everyone had a wonderful day, and Cinderella and her prince lived happily ever after. Well, my cutie pies, always remember that good things happen to good people. Take care. See you next time. Beauty and the Beast. Once upon a time, there lived a wealthy merchant and his 3 daughters. 2 of them were smart, and the 3rd daughter was so kind and beautiful that everybody called her Beauty. One day, the father had to travel to a marketplace far away. Before leaving, he turned to his daughters. "My dear daughters, what presents should I bring from faraway lands?" The first daughter asked for new books. The second daughter asked for a lovely dress. And only the youngest daughter was silent. "My dear father, the only thing I would like to have is a red rose picked specially for me." The merchant spent a lot of time abroad, and one day he was ready to go back. On his way, he had to go through the deep forest. Suddenly, he found a huge castle and went inside. "Anybody home?" asked the merchant. But nobody answered him. Next to the castle, there was a large old garden. He went into the garden and saw a beautiful rose bush growing in the lawn and remembered his youngest daughter's request. He chose the most beautiful rose and picked it from the bush. Suddenly, the man heard a strange noise from the garden. He turned back and saw a terrible beast on the doorstep of the castle. The beast was roaring angrily. He tried to explain that he took the rose for his beautiful daughter, but the beast remained very angry. The beast agreed to let him go only if he promised to send his beautiful daughter to the castle. The merchant was very frightened, so he agreed and ran back home. He told his daughters about the beast. The first daughter started to cry. The second daughter didn't know what to say, and only the youngest daughter, his Beauty, understood the situation and agreed to go to the castle to save her father's life. The Beast met Beauty on the doorstep. At first, she was frightened as the Beast was very tall and big. But then she understood that he is kind and helpful. He let her stay in the biggest room and allowed her to walk in the garden that was full of beautiful roses. She loved the roses, so she spent a lot of time in the garden. Though Beauty felt good in the castle, sometimes she was very sad. She missed home, especially her father. Then the Beast gave her a magic mirror and said, "Look at the mirror, and you can see your family. Now you won't feel lonely anymore." One day, Beauty looked in the mirror and saw that her father was very ill. She turned to the Beast and said, "Please, let me go home. I only want to see my father." And the Beast said, "You may go to stay with your father for 7 days, but you should promise to return back." Beauty agreed. She left the castle and went home. Her father was very happy, and soon he recovered. Beauty stayed with her family for 7 days and more. She forgot the Beast and his castle. But one night, she had a terrible nightmare in which she saw the Beast was in danger. Some hunters had found the castle and attacked the Beast. He was calling for help. Beauty woke up and went back to the castle because she wanted to help the Beast. She rushed into the castle at that very moment when the hunters started to shoot. When he saw Beauty, he realized that she is the only person who cares for him. Now he felt strong and fearless. He chased the hunters and defended the castle. Beauty realized that the Beast had a very brave heart, which is much more important than a beautiful face. Suddenly, the miracle happened, and the Beast turned into a handsome prince. Beauty and the Beast lived happily ever after and celebrated their wedding in the castle. Well, my bonnies, did you like the story? Now you see how important it is to judge people by their actions, not by their appearance. Oh, it looks like you're already sleeping. Good night, my angels. See you tomorrow. The Snow Queen. Once there lived an evil wizard, the Snow Queen, who made a magic mirror. If anything good or beautiful was put in front of the mirror, the reflection showed on the surface was only bad and ugly. The Snow Queen was very pleased. She wanted to show her evil mirror to the whole world. She took it and flew up high into the sky. She flew so fast that the mirror smashed into 1,000,000 pieces. The tiny bits of glass fell on the ground. Years later, a boy named Kai and a girl named Gerda were friends. They lived next door to each other. Kai and Gerda's families were poor. There were no toys to play with, but they did not mind. They played in their garden on the roof and were happy. One day, Gerda and Kai were on the roof tending the garden. All of a sudden, a gust of wind blew by. Something got right into Kai's eye. He stood up and said, "I don't want to grow anything in this stupid garden." Unfortunately, it was that sharp, tiny bit of glass from the evil wizard. "Oh," sighed Gerda, "it's strange. What happened to you? And how about a clapping game?" But Kai cried out, "I don't want to play with you, Gerda, ever again." Gerda was very upset. She didn't understand what was wrong with Kai. The next day, Kai took his sleigh and went for a ride. He drove faster and faster until the sleigh led him to the castle of the Snow Queen. The Snow Queen, in her white fur coat, had known very well that Kai was on the road. She was waiting for him in the main hall of the castle, sitting on her throne. "So, you like to drive fast on your sleigh?" "Yes," nodded Kai. "And you like cold winter weather?" asked the Queen again. "Yes, I do," said Kai. "I can make the winter last forever, but your heart will be frozen as well. I will give you one kiss on your cheek, and you will forget your family and friends, especially Gerda," said the Queen angrily. Kai was not afraid. He was ready for an adventure, so he replied, "Oh, I don't care about that silly girl or my family." The Snow Queen kissed Kai on the cheek, and he felt cold in his heart. Kai did not return home that day or the day after that. His family and his friend Gerda were very upset. Gerda decided to go and find him. She had walked for many days already when she met a kind woman living in a house on the edge of a village. The woman gave her warm clothes and a pair of deer with a sleigh she could ride on her way. Gerda missed her friend Kai very much, so she cried out, "Oh, Kai, where are you?" They flew like the wind for 3 days. When they got closer, they saw it was a large, dark palace. She found him on top of a frozen lake, down on his knees. A throne was empty. "Kai!" called Gerda. At last, Kai looked up, but he looked right past her with his deep, dark eyes and did not see her at all. Gerda burst into tears. As Gerda cried, one of her tears blew right onto Kai's face. The tear burned his face until his whole face felt hot. Kai shivered. He cried with joy, for the evil bit of glass was washed from his eye. Kai took Gerda's hands. Though they were both frozen cold, each of them felt warm inside. They walked together out of the castle and came back home. As the years passed, Gerda and Kai remained the best of friends. There were no more adventures with the Snow Queen or the cold, frozen north, and each lived a quiet life. But they knew that no matter what, they would always look out for each other. Well, my sweeties, this is the end of the story. Take care and good night. The Brave Little Tailor. Once upon a time, there lived a little tailor. One summer morning, he was sitting at his table by the window. He was very hard-working, so he sewed his next order. After a while, he felt hungry. The little tailor got a piece of bread and a little jelly, sliced the bread on the table, and kept sewing. Suddenly, a swarm of flies flew toward the bread, attracted by the smell. The tailor tried to scare them away but couldn't, so he grabbed a fly swatter and swatted at them. In one swing of his fly swatter, he got 7 flies, and he thought the whole city should know about it. "Look at me! 7 at one stroke!" exclaimed the tailor. He made himself a belt and placed those words on it in big letters. He left his house and went all around the area telling everyone about his brave deed. Eventually, this news reached all the corners of the kingdom until the king himself heard about the brave little tailor who slew 7 with one blow. At that time, the whole kingdom was terrified by a huge giant. Especially, he annoyed the peasants by stealing their cattle and scaring the passing travelers. The king asked to find the little tailor and bring him to the palace. "Well," he said, "so you are the brave tailor who can strike 7 at once?" The tailor was ashamed to tell the real story, so he answered, "Oh, yes, Your Majesty. I am very brave and strong. I can strike anyone." "And what about one scary giant? Can you strike him?" The tailor was terrified when he heard about the giant, but he was ashamed to admit it to the king, so he replied, "Oh, yes, this is nothing for me. I will strike him at once." The king gave him the finest armor and showed him the way to the giant's hut. The tailor wandered along the road thinking, "Poor me, what should I do now? I can only slap the flies, and here a giant?" He came to the giant's hut and knocked on the door. "Who's there?" asked the giant angrily. The tailor cleared his throat, cheered up, and said in a low, rough voice, "I am the bravest man in the kingdom. You tortured the whole kingdom. Come out, and I will fight you." The giant came out and saw a little funny man standing on his doorstep. He was so small, the giant could hardly see him. The giant said, "Ha, ha, ha! What a funny fellow! How could you fight with me? I could easily swallow you at once." Suddenly, a tiny idea came to the tailor's mind. "I am not very strong, but I am very clever, and I can sew." So he said to the giant, "It's not time yet for fighting. First of all, give me some food. Second of all, give me some water. And finally, get me a bed to sleep. And in the morning, we will fight." The giant was shocked to hear such a shameless young man, so he had nothing to say. He just let him in. That night, while the giant was sleeping, the tailor sewed the giant's mouth shut. Now the giant could not eat anything. When he woke up, he begged the tailor to undo the stitches on his mouth by making signs to him. The tailor agreed, but only on one condition. You will open your mouth only if you promise to stop frightening the people around and stealing their cattle. The giant agreed, and the tailor removed the stitches. The giant left the kingdom, and the tailor got a lovely reward from the king. He became a nobleman. He had a castle of his own and a huge piece of land. On the gate of his castle, he placed his favorite words, which made him so popular. 7 at 1 stroke. The whole country admired the little tailor for his bravery. The tailor was very proud of himself. He understood that it's not always necessary to be strong when you have a good imagination and a smart brain. Well, my honey pies, this is the end of the story. Sweet dreams. See you soon. The Magic Pot. Long, long ago, there lived an old woman who sewed the best soup in the market. It was chicken soup. Nobody knew the old woman's name. Nobody knew where she lived. Nobody knew why her soup was always the best in the market, but everybody admitted that it was. Every morning, the old woman came to the market square. She carried a big black pot of hot chicken soup. Then she sat down under a tree and sewed her soup. The steam came up from the pot and charmed the people passing by. Usually it didn't take long to sell all the soup. There lived a small boy not far from the market square. His family was poor but very hard-working. He loved the soup, but he had no money to buy it. He was really curious to know what made her soup so special. The boy said to himself, "Oh, goodness, if only I knew the recipe of the soup, I would feed all my family." One day, when the old woman put her empty pot in her cart and left the market square, the boy followed her. She did not notice him and kept going home. They went a long, long way. They climbed up a high hill, passed through a field, passed through a forest, but still the woman kept going. Evening came, and the boy was afraid to go on in the dark, but he went on. At last, the woman came to a little house on a hill. There stood a very large pot in the center of the room. "How big that pot is," thought the boy. He went up to the pot and looked into it. It was empty. The woman entered the house. The boy was afraid to reveal himself, so he quickly hid behind the door. The woman came up to the large pot and began to sing. "Magic pot, oh magic pot, make my chicken soup real hot. Make my chicken soup real nice for a little, little price." Very soon, the soup was ready. Steam came out of the pot. The smell of the soup was very good. The boy smelled the soup and felt very hungry. The old woman finished cooking and went out of the room. The boy crept up to the pot and looked under it. There was no fire, but the pot was full of hot chicken soup. I must have some of it. I am so hungry, the boy said to himself, and reached his hands to take a piece of chicken. Suddenly, the old woman returned and saw the boy with his hands in the pot. "Oh, what are you doing here?" she cried. The boy was afraid of the strange woman, but he wanted to taste the soup so much that he didn't move, and he convinced the old woman that he had followed her from the market only to know the recipe for her magic soup. He swore that he would never have entered the house if he had not been so fascinated by her cooking. The woman was angry that he had learned her secret and now might tell everyone the recipe for her chicken soup. She thought for a while and suggested the following. "I will give you a bowl of soup 3 times a day, but you must stay here with me and serve me." The boy loved her soup, so he agreed to stay with the woman. Several years passed. The boy served and lived in the house and worked as a cook. He learned all the secrets and knew the exact recipe of the famous soup. Now he could cook it by himself. Once, when the woman went to the market, he decided to run away from her. He grabbed the magic pot and ran out of the house. The pot was heavy and big. The boy had a hard time carrying it. He ran all day and did not stop. He told his parents all about the old woman and her special soup. Then he pointed at the magic pot and said, "Now I know the recipe for the most delicious soup in the world. I can feed the whole family and sell the soup to the neighbors. We will be rich." The boy and his parents lived happily ever after and enjoyed the chicken soup every day. This is the end of the story, my sweeties. I hope you enjoyed it. I wish you a good night and sweet dreams. Thumbelina. There once lived a woman whose only dream was to have a baby girl. One day she asked a nice fairy for help. She agreed and gave her a magic seed. "Care for it properly, and you will get your wish," the fairy said. The woman planted the seed in a pot of soil. She ensured it got plenty of sun and water. Shortly, the seed grew into a pretty yellow tulip. Inside the tulip, there was a lovely girl. She had smooth yellow hair and sparkling green eyes. She was no larger than the woman's thumb. "I will call you Thumbelina," said the mother. Thumbelina helped her mother to take care of the house. Thumbelina loved to sing. She had a lovely voice. Thumbelina and her mother were very happy. One day, a clumsy frog heard Thumbelina singing. He was charmed by her singing and decided to marry her. That night, the frog hopped in through the window. He kidnapped Thumbelina, stealing the walnut shell where Thumbelina lay sleeping. The following morning, Thumbelina woke up on a lily pad. She did not want to be the frog's bride, as he was ugly and vicious. Thumbelina cried and cried all day long. A fish heard Thumbelina crying. He felt sorry for her. When the frog was not looking, the fish chewed through the stem of the lily pad. The lily pad began to float away. Thumbelina thanked the fish and drifted away. She floated downstream, searching for a new home. Soon she arrived in a small town of water beetles. They were not very nice to little Thumbelina.
"Look how unattractive she is,"
the beetles said.
"She has only 2 legs and no wings."
Thumbelina couldn't stay long with mean beetles. She went down the river once again until she reached a green field. Thumbelina spent the hot summer season in the field. She ate nectar from the flowers and water from the buttercups. She was happy. Summer changed into fall. It was getting cold. One friendly field mouse invited the little girl to stay in her house for the winter. Thumbelina agreed. Soon she met Mr. Mole, who lived nearby. Mr. Mole wished to marry Thumbelina, but she didn't like him. He lived underground. If they married, Thumbelina would have to live underground as well. She did not like that idea. In the middle of the winter, Thumbelina met a sick and tired swallow. She loved birds with all her heart, so she looked after the bird until she got better.
"Would you like to fly away from here?"
the swallow asked Thumbelina. It was her only dream, so she agreed with pleasure. She climbed on the swallow's back, and off they went. They traveled high over jungles and lakes, hills and deserts. Thumbelina held on tight. They flew until they tumbled into the swallow's nest close to a field. The meadow was warm as well as full of pretty blossoms.
"I will live in my nest,"
said the swallow,
"and you can live in one of these flowers."
The swallow flew her over to the loveliest flower in the field. In the center of the blossom, there stood a handsome prince. He was very small, exactly like Thumbelina. He had wings on his back and a crown on his head. The prince fell in love with Thumbelina. The couple were shortly married. All the flower fairies came to their wedding. Thumbelina and the prince lived happily ever after. Well, my sweethearts, you see that even if you are small and helpless, you can always find a friend who can help you. Good night, my bonnies. Sweet dreams to all of you. Jack and the Beanstalk. Once upon a time, there lived a poor woman and her son, Jack. One day, Jack's mother told him to sell their only cow. Jack went to the market and met a man who wanted to buy his cow. Jack asked, "What will I get in exchange for my cow?" The man answered, "I will give you 5 magic beans." Jack didn't know much about money, so he agreed. Jack took the magic beans and gave the cow to the man. When he reached home, Jack's mother was very angry, as 5 beans wouldn't feed them for long. She said, "How silly you are! Someone took away your cow and gave you some beans instead of real coins. What shall I do now? What are we going to eat?" She threw the beans out of the window. The next day, when Jack woke up in the morning and looked out of the window, he saw a huge beanstalk had grown from his magic beans. He was very surprised. He climbed up the beanstalk. It was very tall. He climbed and climbed, but the beanstalk didn't end. Finally, he reached the last branch. He looked around and saw a magic kingdom in the sky. He stepped off of the beanstalk and saw a huge castle in front of him. It turned out that this was the castle of a giant. He lived there with his wife. Jack went inside the castle and found the giant's wife in the kitchen. Jack said, "Could you please give me something to eat? I am so hungry." The wife was kind and gave him bread and some milk. While he was eating, the giant came home. The giant was very big and looked very fearsome. Jack was terrified and hid inside the cupboard. The giant said suspiciously,
It seems that I smell a little boy here. Where is he?"
The wife said, "There is no boy in here." The giant looked around carefully but found nobody. He ate his food and went to his room. He took out his bags of gold coins, counted them, and put them in the closet. Then he went to sleep. Jack watched him through the keyhole in the cupboard. When the night came, Jack got out of his hiding place, took one bag of gold coins, and climbed down the beanstalk. At home, he gave the coins to his mother. His mother was very happy, and they lived well for some time. But one day, all the money was spent, and his mother asked Jack to return to the giant's castle and bring more gold. Jack climbed the beanstalk and went to the giant's castle again. He went to the kitchen and met the giant's wife. She was a nice woman, so they sat at the table for a cup of tea and small talk. The giant returned home in the middle of the tea party. Jack froze in horror and hid under the bed. The giant said,
I smell a small boy again. Where is he?"
His wife answered again, "There is no boy in here." The giant looked around carefully, but again found nobody. He ate his food and went to his room. There he took out a goose. He shouted, "Lay!" and the goose laid a golden egg. When the giant fell asleep, Jack took the goose and climbed down the beanstalk. Jack quickly ran inside his house, grabbed an axe, and began to chop the beanstalk. The giant wanted to follow him, but the beanstalk fell down. He was very angry as he couldn't reach the boy. He had no choice but to yell from up above,
"Don't you dare to come back to my kingdom ever again."
Jack and his mother were very happy, and they became very rich. They lived happily ever after and never thought about the giant again. Oh dear, the story is amusing, right? I hope you liked it. Good night to all of you. Sweet dreams. The Little Mermaid. Once upon a time, there was a little mermaid who lived deep in the sea with her father. She was the youngest daughter of the Sea King. She spent all her life under the water, but was always dreaming about life on the land. Every day she swam to the surface, hoping to see any humans. One night, she swam to the surface and saw a big ship. There was a handsome young prince standing on the stern of the ship. The mermaid was charmed by this young man. Suddenly, the waves became strong and the ship was tossed up and down until it finally sank, throwing the passengers into the ocean. The mermaid swam up to the young man and saved him. She brought him up to the surface and carried him to the shore. She stayed with him until the sun came up, singing a pure and beautiful melody. Finally, the young fellow opened his eyes. The mermaid knew she couldn't be seen by a human, so she quickly swam back into the sea. Later on, his servants came to the beach and found him lying on the shore. They asked him what had happened. The prince couldn't remember. He only said that someone had saved his life, a young woman. He could still hear her beautiful voice singing in his head, but had never seen her face. The mermaid was very sad because she missed the prince. She even wanted to return to the surface and find him. She told this story to her sisters. They felt sorry for her, but they were sure that it was a very bad idea because the little mermaid could not stay on the surface for a long time. The mermaid was very sad because her only dream was to find her beloved prince on the land. One day, she was sitting alone on the rock when she saw an evil witch coming up to her. "Hello, little mermaid. How are you, my poor child?" the witch asked slyly. At first, the mermaid was afraid, but then she thought that the witch could help her and replied, "I am very sad because I can't be on the surface with my beloved human." "Oh, that's not a problem, my dear," said the witch. "I will help you to get a pair of long, slim feet, but you will have to give me something as a reward," said the witch. Her sisters tried to convince her that life was much better under the sea than on the surface, but she didn't listen. The witch agreed to help her, but there was a catch. If the mermaid did not kiss the prince before sunset, the spell would break and she would again become a mermaid. Despite unfair conditions, the mermaid agreed and turned into a beautiful girl. She was tall and slim and had a pair of feet as a normal human. Suddenly, the mermaid couldn't breathe under the water. She tried to reach the water's surface, but swimming was much harder with legs instead of flippers. Finally, she reached the surface, caught her breath, and started swimming to the shore. The little mermaid woke up on the shore just before the sun came up. She decided to find the royal palace where the prince lived. She came to the palace and saw her prince, who was standing on a balcony. The prince saw the girl and invited her for dinner. The prince and his servants were very kind to the girl. They gave her a fine dress and taught her good manners. The prince was very nice and friendly to her. That evening, the prince took the mermaid out for a romantic ride in his boat. Her friends from the sea knew they had to help the mermaid to kiss the prince, so they sang a song to make the atmosphere even more romantic. The prince didn't understand what they were singing about, but it worked, and he finally kissed the mermaid. The evil witch was very angry because the mermaid managed to win the prince's heart so quickly. The prince and princess spent their whole lives together. They had many children who, more than anything, loved to swim in the sea. It was a very romantic story, right? The mermaid fought for her love and won her chance. Well, see you next time, my sweeties. Good night to all of you. Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. Once upon a time, there lived a lovely princess with fair skin and blue eyes. She was so fair that they called her Snow White. She lived in a castle with her father, the king, and her stepmother, the queen. Her father was kind and caring. He loved his daughter very much. Her stepmother was an arrogant and cruel woman. She wanted to be the most beautiful lady in the kingdom, so she was jealous of Snow White's beauty and wanted to get rid of her. Stepmother had a magic mirror. She often sat down in front of it and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the magic mirror would say, "You are, your majesty." But one day the mirror replied, "Snow White is more beautiful than you." The wicked queen was very angry. She ordered her huntsman to take Snow White to the forest and leave her there alone. But when the huntsmen reached the forest, they felt pity on her and they decided to hide her in a secret place. They took her to a tiny cottage and left her on the doorstep. The Snow White knocked on the door, but nobody answered, so she went inside. There was nobody there, but she found 7 plates on the table and 7 tiny beds in the bedroom. She cooked a wonderful dinner and cleaned the house. She felt tired and fell asleep on one of the tiny beds. That night, the 7 dwarfs who lived in the cottage came home and found Snow White sleeping. When she woke up, she found all 7 dwarfs gathered round the bed and looking at her in surprise. She told them her story, and the dwarfs asked her to stay with them. The dwarfs loved her and cared for her. Every morning when they left the house, they warned her not to talk to any strangers, no matter who knocked. Meanwhile, in the palace,
The wicked queen wanted to make sure that Snow White had disappeared forever, and that now she was the most beautiful woman in the kingdom. So she asked the mirror,
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?
The mirror replied, Snow White is still the fairest of them all. She is alive. The wicked stepmother asked the mirror to show her on the screen, and it showed Snow White sitting in the garden with 7 dwarfs around her. The queen was really furious. She was actually a witch and knew how to make magic potions. She made a poisonous potion and sprinkled it on a shiny red apple. Then she turned herself into an old peasant woman and cast a spell over the apple.
Let her eat this shiny apple. Let the slumber come forever. No one interrupts her dream till the first kiss she would feel. She took the apple and went into the woods, looking like a kind old woman. She knocked on the cottage door and said, Pretty little child, let me in. Look what I have for you.
Snow White said,
I am so sorry, old lady. I cannot let you in. The 7 dwarfs have told me not to talk to strangers.
But then Snow White saw the shiny red apple and opened the door. The old lady offered her to taste the apple, and when she took a bite, poor Snow White fell into a deep sleep. When the 7 dwarfs came home, they found Snow White lying on the floor sleeping. They were very upset. They cried all night and then built a glass coffin for Snow White. They kept the coffin in front of the cottage. Some years passed, and one day a charming young prince was passing by the cottage and saw Snow White lying in the coffin. He was curious to look in and found the beautiful girl inside. Snow White was so charming that the prince fell in love from the first sight and kissed her. Snow White opened her eyes. She was alive again. The prince and the 7 dwarfs were very happy. The dwarfs started to sing and dance, celebrating this happy moment. The prince married Snow White and took her to his palace. They lived happily ever after in love and harmony. This is the end of this lovely story. I hope you liked it, my bonnies. See you next time. Sleep well. The Magic Lamp. Once upon a time, there was a poor boy who lived with his mother. One day, a rich stranger came to their house, searching for him. I am a merchant, he said to the mother. I have come all the way from Arabia. I want to take your son with me for a little work, but I will pay him so much that you will not be poor any more. The mother thought a bit and soon agreed because they really needed the money. However, she did not know that the stranger was actually a magician. The next day, the boy packed his things and left with the merchant. They traveled for many days before the merchant stopped. The boy was surprised as it was a lonely spot and there was nothing around, just a bare desert. The merchant took out some colored powder from his pocket. Then he threw it on the ground, and the next moment there was smoke all around. As the smoke cleared away, the boy saw a huge cave right in front of him. The merchant asked the boy to go inside the cave. "You will see tons of gold inside. Take as much as you want, my boy. Then you will see an old lamp. You should bring it to me." The boy became suspicious, but he entered the cave. He filled up his pockets with gold. When he couldn't take any more gold, he looked for the lamp and found it. It was old and dirty. He took the lamp and called out to the merchant to help him out. "Give me the lamp first," the merchant said. The boy was afraid to give the lamp first, as he was afraid to be left all alone in the cave. So he said to the merchant, "Please pull me out first." The merchant got angry and took out some more powder from his pocket. He threw it into the air, and the entrance to the cave was blocked with a huge stone. As the boy had nothing to do, he started to wipe the lamp. Suddenly, a strange fog filled the cave, and a distant voice said, "My master, I am the genie of this lamp. What is your wish?" It was a huge man who looked very strange, and the boy was terrified. But the genie assured him that he would fulfill all his wishes. "Take me home," he said. The next moment, the boy was home and with his mother. Then he called for the genie once again, and he appeared. The boy asked the genie to make him rich and famous. All of a sudden, the boy and his mother appeared in a beautiful castle, surrounded by many servants. As people got to know about the rich boy, he became really famous. He was now married to the princess, the daughter of the sultan, and they were very happy. The magician was also aware of what had happened to the boy. He came to the palace pretending to be a rag man who exchanges old lamps for new ones. The boy was not at home, so his wife met the magician on the doorstep. She didn't know that their lamp was special, so she gave it to the rag man with no hesitation. The magician was thrilled. Now he was the new master of the lamp. He called for the genie and asked him for the first wish. "Take this castle and shift it away to the desert." When the boy returned home, he could not find his palace, his princess, and his mother. He was very worried, but then he realized it must be the work of the evil magician who wanted to take revenge. The boy remembered the place where the magician had taken him when he was younger, and he decided to go back to the desert. He traveled for many days, but finally he found his castle in the desert. He entered inside and saw the magic lamp placed on a table next to the magician. Before the magician knew what was happening, the boy quickly jumped and grabbed the lamp. He rubbed the lamp and the genie appeared.
"I am so happy to serve you again. What do you wish for?" he asked. The boy answered, "I want to send this evil magician to some distant place from where he can never return or harm anyone." "No problem, my master," said the genie, and the evil magician disappeared, never to return again. Since that time, the boy and his family have lived happily ever after. He let the genie out of the bottle and gave him his freedom. Well, my bonnies, be careful with your wishes, as they may come true. Good night to all of you.